Hey guys, Jim here with another video for you. This is 50 Years in Film, 2008. But before I begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, but most importantly, leave comments. I would love to hear what you think about the movies from this year, what your favorite movies are from this year. So before we begin, we're going to start with the normal caveats. These are not all of the films from 2008. Far from it. These are simply the films that I own in my collection. And also, this is not a ranking video of any kind. Again, this is simply just a recap of some of the films that were released in that year. So as usual, we're just going to jump around from genre to genre. We're going to start off with animation. And in 2008, Pixar released WALL-E. WALL-E not only is my favorite Pixar movie, it might be my favorite animated family movie of all time. This one totally came up on me unexpectedly the first time I saw it, and I generally hate sweet, movies, love stories, all that stuff. I adore this movie. I can't sing the praises enough of WALL-E. I absolutely love it. Now we're going to switch over to comedy. And the first one on the list, In Bruges, starring Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and Ralph Fiennes, written and directed by Martin McDonagh. I absolutely love this movie. I saw this on video. I did not see this theatrically, and it is hysterically funny, but it also has a heart, and it has a lot of surprises. This movie's awesome. Continuing with the comedies, we have Pineapple Express, starring Seth Rogen, James Franco, and Danny McBride. This is a stoner comedy. It's good. I like Pineapple Express. It's not my favorite stoner comedy, of course, but it is pretty damn funny. And then we have another movie with Seth Rogen from Kevin Smith, written and directed by Kevin Smith, Zack and Mary Make a Porno, starring Seth Rogen, as I said, Elizabeth Banks, Jeff Anderson, Jason Mewes, and Tracy Lords. Ironically, Tracy Lords was a porn star in the 80s and single-handedly almost caused the porn industry to be shut down forever in America. Google it. Then we have Role Models, starring Seann William Scott, Paul Rudd, Elizabeth Banks again, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse. Again, I really like this movie. I don't love it, but I really do like it. I think it's pretty funny. Next, we have Forgetting Sarah Marshall, starring Jason Segel, Mila Kunis, Kristen Bell, Russell Brand, and Paul Rudd again. This movie's hysterical. But probably my favorite comedy and funniest comedy of that year, Tropic Thunder. This is my Kino release. Directed by Ben Stiller. Starring Ben Stiller, Jack Black, Jay Baruchel, and in his Academy-nominated performance for Best Supporting Actor, Robert Downey Jr. This movie is absolutely hysterical. They could not make this movie today. Absolutely not. But it is absolutely hysterical. I love it. Now we're switching over to the action genre, and we're back to Bond. Oops, excuse me. And in 2008, Unfortunately, we're talking about Quantum of Solace. Again, starring Daniel Craig and Judi Dench. We're not going to talk about this movie anymore because this and Die Another Day are the two worst movies in the James Bond filmography, in my opinion. I flip a coin to decide which one's the worst. And what really makes it even worse than that is that arguably the best one, Casino Royale, is right in the middle of them. This movie's horrible. It's definitely in the running for the Hall of Shame for 2008. But then again, so is this. You knew it was coming. From my Indiana Jones collection. And unfortunately, we're talking about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, and Shia LaBeouf. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This movie is an abomination. Next we have Valkyrie. This is a World War II drama based on a plot to assassinate Hitler, starring Tom Cruise and Kenneth Branagh. Directed by Bryan Singer. Solid movie. Not a classic, not one of Tom Cruise's best, but it's a solid movie. Next, back to my Rambo collection. For the first time in over 20 years, with the fourth installment, Rambo. Written and directed by Sylvester Stallone, and starring Sylvester Stallone. When I heard that they were making a fourth Rambo film, I laughed. I was like, are you kidding me? Sly is getting a little bit, old to be trampling around in the forest, but I didn't really have a lot of hopes. Then I saw the Red Band trailer for this online before the movie came out. And let's just say there's a certain sequence in the movie that involves two guys sitting in a Jeep with a mounted gun behind him that he utilizes in a quite interesting way. From that moment on, I knew I wanted to see this movie, and it delivers. This movie's awesome. As far as just full-on carnage, this one's the one. It's not my favorite in the series. It's not my best. I don't think it's the best in the series or my favorite, but it is much more entertaining than I thought it would be. And it's much better than the two movies that it's in between, 3 and 5. Now we're starting to switch into the sci-fi realm with an action tint. We're talking about Doomsday. Directed by Neil Marshall, starring Rona Mitra, Sean Pertwee, and Malcolm McDowell. This movie is literally a combination of Escape from New York, The Road Warrior, and a little bit of Excalibur thrown in. It is a blatant ripoff of, first and foremost, of Escape from New York. It's not very original. It's not especially good, but man, is it entertaining. It's not boring, especially the unrated cut. Again, this is one of those guilty pleasure type movies. Continuing with that vein, we have Cloverfield. This one is directed by Matt Reeves. That's what I thought. This was a found footage, kind of a found footage movie. Expertly done, by the way. And it's basically a ground level view of what would happen if Godzilla suddenly showed up one day and started attacking the city. Cloverfield, I gotta admit, it's pretty damn ingenious how it's constructed, and it is really entertaining. Then we're sliding into horror. And we're back to my Saw collection, because every year, got to have that new Saw sequel. And in 2008, it was Saw 5. I don't like this movie. I think it sucks. I also kind of think the same thing about this movie. Sorry about the tag in the way, but The Happening, written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Mark Wahlberg, John Leguizamo, and is it Emily Deschanel? Yeah, I believe so. Again, this one's my wife's. The first 10, 15 minutes of this movie is outstanding. It's incredible. The opening sequences of this movie are among the best that Shyamalan has ever done. It's everything that happens after it, and it's the ending in this one especially. It's ridiculous. Yeah, this is another one that is a candidate for the Wall of Shame for 2008. But this movie's much better. The Ruins. Directed by Scott Smith and starring Jenna Malone and Sean Ashmore. That's the guy's name. This is a creepy, gory movie, and it's so good. I really, really, really like this movie, man. Again, it's based on a novel, which I've never read. But this movie, especially the unrated version, is really good. It's one of the best horror movies from this year. And it came out of nowhere. I did not see this theatrically. I saw this on video. And yeah, I really like this movie. Then we have George Romero's Diary of the Dead. His 5th zombie directorial effort. And again, this is kind of like a found footage movie. It follows a group of college kids that are in film school that are making a movie in the woods when the zombie apocalypse breaks out. And it's kind of like, it ties into the original Night of the Living Dead. It's like if zombie movies never existed. And there's a couple of moments in this movie I really like, but quite honestly, this is a very underwhelming film. Then we have The Midnight Meat Train, starring Bradley Cooper, Brooke Shields, Vinnie Jones, directed by my buddy, who I can never pronounce his name, Rui Kitamura. One of these days I'm going to get it right. This is the guy that directed Versus and a great movie coming up in a couple of years called Nowhere No One Lives. This is based on a Clive Barker short story. And again, it's creepy as hell. There's some really, really cool stuff in this movie. There's a couple of moments that are pretty ridiculous, but I like this movie. This one definitely flew underneath the radar here in the United States. Lionsgate barely released it. I saw it on video, and I'm a Clive Barker fan, and yeah, it's a good movie. It's not a great movie, but it's a very good one. But this one might be the best in the home invasion genre from the 2000s and 2010s. The Strangers, starring Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. Written and directed by Brian Burnton. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the man. But I am familiar with this movie, and it's creepy as hell. This has one of the best taglines ever, right there. Why are you doing this to us? Because you were home. That more or less explains the entire plot of this movie, and that's what makes it so damn spooky. Like I said before, out of that entire genre, this one I think is the best. Now we're sliding into some graphic novels and comic book movies. We're starting off with Wanted, starring Angelina Jolie, James McAvoy, Common, and Morgan Freeman. Directed by, and here we go again, Timur Bekmambetov. Something Russian, okay? This is the guy that did Day Watch and Night Watch and those movies. This movie's great. This movie is so much fun. I remember when they were filming this in Chicago, there was a big deal because another film that we will be getting to in a couple of moments was also being filmed in Chicago around the same time. Wanted's a lot of fun. I had never read the comic that it was based on, so I knew nothing about this movie going in. And I just thought it was going to be kind of like a Matrix ripoff. And oh my God, Wanted is so, so much fun. Every time I watch this movie, every time James McAvoy goes, sorry, I lose it. I laugh my ass off every time. This movie is great. Next comic book movie we have, Punisher, Warzone. Starring the late, great Ray Stevenson, Dominic West, and unfortunately that piece of shit Doug Hutchinson, who does put in a good performance. He's from the Shawshank Redemption, and if you don't know why I'm calling him that, look it up. This movie's crazy, okay? A lot of people don't like this movie. They prefer the Thomas Jane one or even the Dolph Lundgren one. Believe it or not, out of those three versions of the Punisher, this one's my favorite just because it is so, so over the top crazy. There's like no story to this movie at all. It's just non-stop killing. And my God, it's fun. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. But then we had a little movie called Iron Man. Directed by Jon Favreau. And starring Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, and Jeff Bridges. This is the one that started it all. There was some hype about this movie when it came out because there was a couple of comic book movies coming out because we're not done yet. And this one wasn't considered to be, it was the dark horse. And this movie was definitely not the dark horse. It did not make as much as another movie that we're going to get to in a couple of minutes. But as everybody knows, it launched an entire franchise, studio, and a different way to make movies for the next 20 years. We'll get to the rest of those movies coming up, including the next movie. But this is really the first one that started it all. And it's still one of the best. Robert Downey Jr., when he was cast as Iron Man, people were losing their minds. How, they can't get him as Tony Stark, and he is the perfect Tony Stark. Iron Man is a great, great film. But then right around the same time came The Incredible Hulk, starring Edward Norton. This one was going in. People thought this would be the bigger hit than Iron Man. They were wrong. This movie made less than half of what Iron Man ended up pulling in. And most fans of the MCU tend to dump on this movie. I think this is one of the most underrated films in the entire MCU. It's far from perfect. But I consider it a much, much better movie than most, and I think it's a vast improvement over Hulk, directed by Ang Lee, starring Eric Bana, that came out a couple of years earlier. Mark Ruffalo, I think, is a better Hulk than Edward Norton. But this is the movie that kind of introduced William Hurt to the franchise, and he remained with the franchise until he passed away. I like Incredible Hulk a lot. But let's face it, the comic book movie and superhero movie that year, from my Dark Knight trilogy, the second installment, The Dark Knight, directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Christian Bale, Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Aaron Eckhart, and the late, great Heath Ledger in his Academy Award-winning performance in Best Supporting Actor as the Joker. The Dark Knight is an incredible film. It was a big hit, and critics loved it, and I went and saw it. I did not see it at opening day because I figured it was going to be packed, so I waited about a week, and then I went and saw it. And when the introduction to Heath Ledger happens in that movie, and he does the magic trick with the pencil, I was shocked. And I thought I was watching a horror film and not a Batman movie. And from that moment, I was in. Because for the first time, a superhero film felt dangerous. And that's what this movie is. It's dangerous. For a PG-13 film, this movie is edgy, it is unrelenting, and it is dark. No pun intended. When Heath Ledger was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, a lot of people felt that it was just out of sympathy because he had passed away, unfortunately, right after filming completed of this movie. And in a way, I kind of felt that way too. But upon re-examination, he deserved that Oscar. Even if he would not have died, I truly do believe he would have won. Because his portrayal of the Joker has become so iconic. When people talk about this film, they don't talk about Batman. They talk about the Joker. He is incredible in this film. As is everything else about this movie. This movie, like I said, this might be the best comic book / superhero movie ever. There is one coming out about 10 years from here that gives it a run for its money, in my opinion. But we'll get to that one when we get to it. But as it is, The Dark Knight is a masterpiece, in my opinion, in the superhero genre. And it's also my favorite film from Christopher Nolan. It's an incredible, incredible film. And that's how we're going to end 2008. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe. Leave those comments. Let me know how you feel about these films. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm going to be closing my poll on Sunday morning. And I will be filming the winner from that poll that afternoon. So we will be having either a ranking the filmography of Tony Scott, Kevin Smith, or Star Wars on Sunday. So if you're interested in that, head to my homepage and vote. Like I said, I'm going to close that poll at approximately 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll catch you on the next one.